this is so much more than just a story about a bus crash. It's really about how 19 people lost their lives in a disaster. A disaster that was, set in motion long before any fire even started. We're going to follow that chain of failures all the way from a single motorcycle to a system that was just completely broken across state lines. So let's set the scene. It's 3:15 in the morning, pitch black. We're on a highway in Andhra Pradesh. There's a private bus just making its usual overnight trip from Hyderabad to Bangalore. For almost everyone on board, it's the deepest part of the night. They're completely sound asleep. And then there's this number, 19. 19 people, 2 of them just children, would never finish that journey. The fire that erupted, it was so intense that many of the bodies were burned beyond recognition. I mean, they needed DNA tests just to give their families some kind of final answer. So what on earth happened out there? Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we have to go back to the very beginning. That one single moment, the initial impact that kicked this whole horrible thing off. So the trigger event was a collision. But here's the thing, it wasn't a head-on crash like you might be thinking. No, the bus actually ran over a motorcycle that was already just lying there in the middle of the road. And that bike, it gets stuck, lodged right underneath the bus. Now that detail, that's going to become absolutely critical in just a moment. So, at first glance, this seems like a terribly sad but simple case. The investigation finds out that the 2 people on the motorcycle had been drinking, they'd skidded, hit the divider, and their bike ended up in the road. Case closed, right? Well, not even close. That is nowhere near the full story. Because what happened next? It wasn't just a string of bad luck. No way. It was a complete cascade of failures, one thing piling on top of another, turning a simple collision into something that was honestly a predictable catastrophe. Okay, let's break this down, step by step. It's like a horrifying chain reaction. First, the motorcycle's fuel tank gets ruptured under the bus. Second, you've got metal from the bike dragging on the road, creating sparks. What do sparks love? Leaking fuel. And boom, you have a fire. But it gets worse. That fire spreads to the luggage, igniting flammable things like, say, cell phone batteries. And within minutes, the entire bus is just an inferno. But here's the absolute kicker, the final step. People tried to get out. They went for the emergency exits, and the windows reportedly wouldn't even open. Just try to imagine the sheer terror inside that bus. This quote really says it all. Most people were sound asleep. They were woken up by fire, by smoke. They're completely disoriented. It's pitch black. The main exits are blocked by flames. And the backup plan, those emergency windows, were apparently useless. They were trapped. There was just nowhere to go. But see, the failures, they didn't just start when the fire did. Not at all. To really, truly understand how this could happen, we have to zoom way out. We need to look at the system itself. A system of broken rules that allowed this specific bus, to even be on the road that night. And this right here, this shows you the problem perfectly. Take a look. The bus was registered way over in Daman Diu. Then it was re-registered in Odisha. But where was it actually running? Hundreds of miles away in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. This is a classic move, a tactic some operators use to find loopholes, maybe to get around stricter safety rules or to dodge taxes in the states where they're actually making their money. 16. Just let that sink in. That's how many traffic violations, or challans, this one bus had racked up in just 22 months before the crash. And we're not talking about a broken taillight here. We're talking serious stuff, like speeding. This bus had a paper trail, a documented history of being a danger on the road. So the bus was a problem? But what about the driver? Who was behind the wheel? Well, the investigation started looking into that too, and pretty soon allegations surfaced that he might have been using a fake license. Just think about that. Another massive potential failure in a system that's supposed to guarantee even the most basic level of competence. And this is what makes it a national tragedy, not just a local one. The victims, they came from 6 different states. You see, when you or I get on a bus to travel across the country, we just assume there's a consistent standard of safety everywhere. We take it for granted. This horrific incident proves that's a really, really dangerous assumption to make. So, okay. We've seen this total, catastrophic breakdown of safety. The big question is, what now? Where do we go from here? Well, the good news is the investigation laid out a pretty clear roadmap for change. First things first, you've got the immediate fixes, the stuff that needs to happen right now. Investigators called for a full audit of the bus company, their entire fleet, all their driver's licenses. They said to suspend the company's services immediately, and so importantly, they pushed for real financial and psychological support for the victims' families. And one more big one, a special inspection blitz on all private travel buses to try and stop this from happening again, tomorrow. But look, quick fixes are just a band-aid. They're not enough. The recommendations also call for a complete long-term overhaul of the system. What does that look like? Well, for starters, you force buses to register in the state where they're actually running. That closes that dangerous loophole we talked about for good. Then you mandate life-saving gear, like automatic fire suppression systems, in every single bus. And you create one central national database for all safety violations. That way, a dangerous bus can't just cross a state line and get a clean slate. It's about rebuilding the entire broken system from the ground up. And all of this, it brings us to one final, really heavy question. When you have a bus with a history of speeding, a driver who might not even have a real license, a bus that's operating under a permit from a completely different state, with emergency exits that apparently didn't work when they were needed most, you have to ask yourself, was this just a freak one-in-a-million accident? Or was it simply inevitable, the predictable result of a system that was broken long before that bus ever hit the road?